Well, ladies and gentlemen, the time has arrived. Isn't it crazy that I've been talking about analog horrors for almost 3 years now, and have yet to do a video on this notorious series? Well, I guess that technically isn't true. Way back in the earlier years, I very briefly covered it, and I wasn't very happy about it because the imagery freaked me out. Then there was a big controversy behind the series, and after that, I just kinda kept my distance. That was until a couple months ago, when the series became a talking point again, and it sounded like people were talking about it positively. I'm sure at this point, you all know the show I'm talking about. UrbanSpook, aka The Painter. I'm also sure you all know the history behind it as well. If not, I'll try to provide a quick summary. Essentially, The Painter is a series about a serial killer who very violently tortures and kills his victims, and then he leaves behind a painting that is usually a very disturbing depiction of the murder. This in concept is actually really interesting, and like I said before, the paintings are actually terrifying to look at. I'm a little less disturbed now because I've seen my fair share of analog horrors at this point, but man, when I was still a little baby boy exploring analog horrors for the first time, this shit had me traumatized. The issues come when all the episodes end up being relatively the same thing. The killer would go around and murder a bunch of people. We'd see the painting, and then rinse and repeat. What didn't help is while the story was said to not be getting any more interesting, the brutality was going up, leading people to say UrbanSpook was nothing but shock value, especially when it gets into more of the wild subject matters. People also weren't big fans of the fact that said paintings that involved those subject matters had shirts being sold with their designs on them. Creators online had criticized this part of the series, and UrbanSpook himself, I guess, didn't take all too kindly to the reception the series began to receive online, and responded in a way that definitely didn't help the situation. This led to The Painter becoming a bit of an infamous analog horror series in the realm. However, it was about a year ago when the episode Hell dropped, and apparently the show actually began to switch things up. Could it be that this analog horror series has managed to turn the tides and become a thrilling tale? Who knows? I've only seen maybe the first 2 entries. Then after that, the rest is a mystery. Even though I'm sure I'm going to be seeing quite the crazy shit. Like you probably saw at the beginning of this video, viewer discretion is heavily advised. When I said the brutality of the series starts to get crazy, I mean it. I'm sure there are going to be a lot of things I'm going to have to imply instead of downright say because of how batshit and gross this series gets. But on that note, if that sounds like a series you are interested in, check it out. But I wouldn't blame you if you decided to sit this one out. It's going to get rough. If you're still here, let's strap in. We definitely need some strong protective gear for this one. But without further ado, let's try our best to survive The Painter. But before I let you get too far, just wanted to say if you're new here and enjoy what you're watching, be sure to hit all those neat buttons down below as it really helps support the channel. I'll also have linked in the description below our socials and the 4-player gaming channel where we dive into the terrifying world of horror video games. But anyways, now you can pass through. Faces. I just started converting VHS tapes to digital, and I found a bunch of tapes in the basement of my apartment complex. This was on one of them. The tape loads in, and we begin to learn about the horrors that await us. 6 months ago, police found 3 paintings stored away in an abandoned storage area, each titled after recent murders. First victim was Carla Gray, found with 36 stab wounds to the face and all her teeth removed. On the back of the first painting, the title Carla's Teeth was written. We are then met with quite the imagery. My, what big teeth you have. Second victim was Jackie Graham, found drowned with 27 stab wounds in the perineum. She was alive during the stabbing. You can look up where that is on the body later and wince in pain. Her painting is titled Floating Jackie. We get to see the painting, and this one at least doesn't look as frightening. I can actually see this one being shown off in public. Last victim was James Miller, found with his face torn off and his wrists slit open. Autopsy showed that James was alive for several days without a face. The third painting was titled James' Secret Face, and sure enough, we get to see what looks like a man tearing his own face off. 2 months later, several more paintings were discovered. However, the titles of these paintings did not seem to be connected to any known cases at the time. This is when we are shown kind of a rapid fire of multiple paintings, and some of them are interesting to say the least. Wax Doll Tom, Lisa's Secret Face, Hanging Jimmy, the one that started the controversy, Daniel After the Fire, Jennifer's Last Stare, and Scream Maggie Scream. After going public with the case and sharing the paintings in hope of saving anyone that may be depicted, the police received 3 photos in the mail, all of them also titled. It's said that these photos depict the victims James, Jackie, and Jimmy. We then get to see these blessed photos. After seeing those nightmares, we are told that if we know anything about the photos or paintings, to call the number below. We then read that one final painting titled Self-Portrait was found 2 days ago, and to end off this tape, we see our infamous killer. To be fair, this is quite the interesting first entry, I gotta say. It introduces this sadistic and brutal killer. We could have probably gone without one of our victims there, but the rest seemed pretty solid, especially with the imagery. Credit where credit is due. This guy creates all his own artwork, and it really manages to invoke a special type of disturbing feeling. But then again, we are only at the beginning, and from what I hear, things don't really change much for a while. The lighthouse. Our entry begins, and we learn that 4 weeks ago a police officer named Bill Collins went missing along with his wife and 2 daughters. Why are you staring at me like that, Bill? Bill had previously discovered this painting in his home, clueless to how it could have ended up there. I'd be very concerned if that found its way into my house. While searching Bill's house, the police found one of his daughters hanging by the neck from the ceiling in the attic. She was only 2 months old. Jesus fuck, the image that just played in my mind. The Collins family car was also found 12 days later by the ocean side. In the car, the police found a painting titled Long-Necked Angel. Angel was indeed the name of the youngest daughter found in the attic, to which we get to see said painting. How's it hanging, Angel? The search would lead to an old lighthouse standing just a few miles away from the abandoned car. The lighthouse hadn't been in use for several years. We are even able to see a very faint image of said lighthouse, barely able to be made out in the dark. On the door to the lighthouse, an abstract face was painted in red. We are then met with this painting of what kind of looks like a face with a sinister smile, covered in these black dots. Once inside, the charred corpse of a missing teenager named Daniel Williams was found. Sounds like we found the body for Daniel after the fire. Police later proceeded into the tunnels under the lighthouse. Here, the police would find 2 more corpses belonging to Jennifer White and her daughter Lisa White. They had been missing for 7 months. Lastly, the police found a moist barrel emitting a foul stench. The barrel was filled with mangled meat and bones. Tests later showed that it belonged to the rest of the Collins family. The tests also showed extreme volumes of amphetamine. Photos of the Collins family moments before death was found scattered around the barrel, which we are then shown these 3 lovely photos. Honestly, I could have sworn I've seen that first and second image from somewhere else before. Lastly, there was a 4th photo depicting an unknown face, to which we are met with this handsome fella. Given the pale face and long hair, I'd say this is our killer. Yet another self-portrait. It also sounds like we managed to find the bodies related to the paintings Lisa's secret face, Jennifer's last stare, and Daniel after the fire. All of them were in this lighthouse. It's also interesting that the only member of Bill's family to have been found is his one daughter Angel, but everyone else in the family is missing. Unless Jennifer and Lisa were his wife and other daughter. He just wouldn't share a last name with Jennifer, which could have some explanations, leaving only Bill to be found. In the walls. This tape is where things get pretty crazy to say the least, at least crazier than they've already been. We are shown the images of Corey and Margaret Beck, both 11 years old. 10 days ago, both of them had gone missing. 5 days later, their bodies were discovered inside an abandoned paper mill factory. However, the state of the bodies were in a gruesome condition, and gruesome is an understatement. Essentially, the twins were both sawed in half, and the top half of Margaret was sewn onto the bottom half of Corey. That's horrific, I gotta say. That's something you'd see in a body horror film, on the levels of like The Human Centipede 2. It's then said the rest of their bodies have still not been found. Margaret's neck and jaw was said to be broken in several places, and a clay brick had violently been shoved down her throat. Bro, what the hell? The word meat had been written on the brick. Corey then went through the ultimate misfortune of getting his shit ripped off like in the first VHS film in The Succubus. 1 week before their disappearance, Corey had been dared by 2 of his friends to spend an hour in a remote cabin near Tiger Lake. We are then shown this area on a map and slowly zoom in. Allegedly, Corey went inside alone with his digital camera while his friend waited outside. After just 4 minutes, Corey ran out screaming that he had seen a face, and according to his friends, Corey's left arm was badly bruised. While investigating the cabin, police found a wardrobe connected to a crawl space inside the walls. Corey's camera was found on the floor inside this open wall cavity. and this is what was on the camera. We then see this image of what looks like we are in a cave, and I don't really see anything in the dark. Not that I want to look for very long. We get to see a few more pictures of this area before we are met with what Corey himself had seen. It's said that this face is believed to be connected to the disappearance of Corey and Margaret Beck, and to end off this tape, we are given a number to contact. I wouldn't be surprised if this was the tape where people started to turn away from the series, especially with all the stuff with Corey. The big argument I saw online was that this was taking it too far. I do also think it was probably in bad taste to sell merchandise regarding Corey. There are movies out there like VHS where people's dicks get ripped off, and Terrifier where chainsaws are going up people's ass cheeks. So I don't really think violence is the problem, but more so the fact that this feels like it was just thrown in here as shock value, and it reached pretty far down the bottom of the barrel in things to use. And unless somehow, some way it all ends up making sense as to why it had to be this way for the story, I think this series could have benefited from dialing it back in that department just a tad. But besides that, so far the series has been keeping my interest. There's been a bit more of a plotline so far than previously expected. Granted, we are only on the third tape, so the series still has time to become unoriginal. The Clue. Private investigator Sean Kane has been helping police locate victims connected to several paintings. The last body he found before his disappearance was the body of Tom Harris. The killer had climbed the drain pipe up to the 3rd floor and entered Tom's apartment through his bedroom window. In the living room, a pile of hardened candle wax was found. We zoom in on the photo and learn that inside this pile of wax was the body of Tom Harris. The cause of death was suffocation from the wax. Sounds like someone was inspired by the worst Saw film. Tom's arms and eyelids had been cut off, and a 3rd arm could be found inside the pile of wax. We still do not know who this arm belongs to. We're then shown either a photo or a painting of Tom Harris within the wax, and it does not look like he's having a fun time. We then learn that 1 week later, investigator Sean went missing from his home. Neighbors of Sean notified police after hearing his dog bark for over 9 hours. Inside, police found a horrid scene, and yeah, it's pretty horrid, so viewer discretion advised. The dog's legs had all been broken. Although dehydrated and suffering, she was still alive. Blood trails could be found leading from the bedroom to the kitchen. The only clue police could find was that Sean seemed to have deliberately painted the number 2 on the doorframe with his own blood. Inside Sean's bedroom, police found a new titled painting clearly resembling Sean. This is the painting and its title. The painting then comes on screen and shows us this man with a creepy smile staring at us, with the title being The Man in the Pipes. The perpetrator had entered Sean's house through the basement. Luckily, Sean had a surveillance camera installed just a few days earlier. Even though the camera had been destroyed, it still caught a photo of the perpetrator. This is the photo. Is it bad that the first thing I thought of when I saw this was the 6'7" kid? God needs to strike me down. This entry has been the first one so far that didn't really advance our plot all that much. We got to meet Sean, only to have him be brutally murdered by the end of the tape. It's also continuing to get clearer that this series is trying to push the line even further, now going for the poor dog. At least he got to live, at least. Witness. 3 days ago, Tina Rosenberg was reported missing along with her boyfriend and younger sister. Her boyfriend, Jack Stryker, wanted to take Tina on a South Coast road trip for her 20th birthday. Flora Rosenberg, the younger sister of Tina, was also invited for this road trip. We then see the 3 of them all put side by side. We then learn that Jack's car was found 2 days ago in the woods. There were signs of a struggle inside the car, and there was also a painting. While searching the car, police heard screaming from deeper within the woods. Police followed the screams until they found a grisly sight. Tina was found tied to a tree with her feet and arms cut off. She was still alive and conscious. The mutilated corpse of Flora Rosenberg could also be located. Her head had been smashed in with a hammer. We are then met with this pleasing image. Tina told the police that the murderer was still around here somewhere. However, no one could be found. After escorting Tina from the scene, the police returned to the car and found another painting. The painting had just been put there. The title Long Jack had hastily been written on its back. I'm going to be honest, I don't know what happened to poor Jack here, but this is something I'm going to see every time I close my eyes. Jack has still not been found. In Tina's own words, this is what happened that night. Oh boy, I remember waking up in the car. Jack was gone and I could hear someone approaching. Next thing I remember, I was tied to that tree. I was injected with something. I could hear my sister screaming. She was screaming for her mom. Oh, Flora. I don't know. I remember whispering. And her face. Oh God, her face. This is a police sketch of the murderer based on Tina's description. Police sketches always have a way of being terrifying, don't they? Again, like the last one, this is pretty much your standard painter tape, with more victims, more paintings, and more brutal killings. The police are not very good at their jobs, if you ask me, considering the killer was able to put a painting in one of the police cars while they were like 2 feet away. I am curious as to the fact Jack has not been found yet. I wonder if he will be discovered in a future tape. Pigs. Did you really think this series wouldn't get worse? Former police officer Ian Ford and his wife, May, were recently reported missing. When police went to their farm to investigate, they found an awful stench coming from the barn. Inside, they found the brutalized corpse of May Ford. She had been handcuffed to a pole inside of the stalls. However, her hands had been ripped right off. Even though her body had been badly mangled, tests showed that she died from internal bleeding. A dead horse could be found within the same stall. The cause of death was heart failure due to a sildenafil overdose. Inside the milk house, police found a bloody mattress. Sildenafil citrate was found scattered around the mattress along with used bandages and packets of penicillin. Someone had been sleeping here for some time. The decapitated head of the Ford's granddaughter was found wrapped in a blanket, to which we get to see the image of Fiona's head. The worst smell came from within the second stall of the barn. Several faces were found nailed to the walls inside the stall. Some of them belonged to previous victims, malformed beyond recognition. There were also several decapitated pig carcasses. In the middle of the stall lay an abnormally large pig. Its belly had been sliced open and stitched together again. Stuffed inside the pig carcass, the police found the corpse of Ian Ford. The pig's eyes had been cut out and replaced with the eyes of Fiona Ford. Inside the tack room, police found the rest of Fiona's body along with several disturbing paintings. It said that these paintings depict Fiona, Ian, and May along with an alarming amount of other victims, and we are then warned that these images may be distressing. You know, considering all that I've seen already, how much worse can it get? We've got Breeding Mount May, Wet Skin George, the Jigsaw Baby, Ian the Pig, Blowhole Isabel, Hide and Zeke, Four Holes Fiona, Breathless Janice, Fleshhead Fred, Tina the Witness, Observing Paul. Damn, that's a lot of people. We then learned that a heavily damaged tape was found in the mud outside the barn. Even though the tape was almost completely destroyed, police were able to recover some of the footage, to which, as to be expected, the footage is then played to us. This tape continued the trend of making all the kills just more disgusting, and there were a lot of them in this go-around. At this point, it is starting to become pretty apparent that not a lot plot-wise has been happening in the last couple of tapes. We have begun to get into that part of the series where it's just the same thing over and over again. The police go out and find crazy paintings, and we read text that describes to us these horrifically graphic murders. We haven't learned anything else about the painter himself. We don't really have a protagonist to follow. It's really just been a compilation of brutal murder descriptions and creepy paintings. Which, don't get me wrong, the paintings and all the art are really cool and impressive, but I'm curious to see if we are going to be getting anything more to it than just violence for the sake of violence. Family. Our tape opens up, and to the surprise of absolutely no one, over the past few days, there have been numerous gruesome murder reports. One of the victims was the elementary school teacher Isabel Jackson. Isabel called 911 in the midst of her attack. However, the address she provided led police to a completely different crime scene. The address belonged to a family of 3, Janice, Paul, and their son Zeke. I will say, while the painter has been pretty repetitive so far, I'm glad that there is at least some sort of connection between the tapes. If you all recall, we saw the paintings Breathless Janice, Observing Paul, and Hide and Zeke in the last tape. This just makes me all the more worried to hear about what happened to them. It's interesting because before we heard about how they were killed, and then were shown the painting and title. However, it is much more effective to hear the title first, because then your brain starts to question what could have happened, and it makes it all the more tense to find out what really did go down. Janice and Paul were expecting a daughter in just a few months. Right outside their home, police found a bloodied garden shear, and what awaited the police inside the house was so shocking and repulsive that one of the officers requested a period of leave from duty the very next day. This ought to be good. Janice and Paul's bodies were found in the kitchen, both ruthlessly executed. The fetus had violently been cut out from Janice's stomach. How did I know something involving the pregnancy was going to happen? Janice was then strangled to death with the umbilical cord. Okay, at some point you have to just chuckle at the absurdity of it all. Paul was found dead a few feet away from Janice, tied to the kitchen counter with his mouth sewn shut. The fetus was found in pieces scattered all around the house. Ah, Jigsaw Baby. I get it. During the autopsy, they found the head of the fetus shoved down Paul's throat. He died from asphyxiation choking on his own unborn daughter. Bruh. Zeke is still missing. Inside the house, there was also a painting. Its title had been painted over except for the word pipes, to which the painting has us looking at this jello-looking face. Probably the head shoved down the throat if I had to guess. A lot of sentences I didn't think I'd say in my life. Police later managed to track down the real address of Isabel Jackson, though they were too late. Go figure. The headless body of Bruce Jackson was found right by the opened front door. He had been stabbed in the chest 7 times. Where one would expect to find his head, a painting lay in its stead. It was titled Infinite Ma Bruce, to which we are met with the thumbnail image for this tape. Isabel was found murdered inside the bathroom. The lock to the door had been completely destroyed by a hammer drill. Isabel suffered multiple skull fractures, and a hole was drilled directly through her frontal lobe. A rolled up note had been put inside of the hole. The note read, "I live where I can't breathe, and I eat without teeth. What am I?" Oh god, are we dealing with the Riddler? A pivotal clue emerged at the crime scene, unraveling new possibilities in the investigation. The presence of 2 sets of footprints in the blood suggests that there was more than one culprit. The police now firmly believe that whoever is behind these paintings and murders does not work alone. As for why Isabel gave the address leading to another murder scene is still a mystery. Isabel's 911 call stands as one of the most disturbing calls ever recorded, and in a frightening change of pace, we are then played a very distressing 911 call. We hear as Isabel frantically tells the dispatcher that someone had broken into her house, and she believes her husband is already dead. We listen as she tries to hide in the bathroom, but the killer knows she is in there. The dispatcher tries to calm her down by telling her the police are on their way, even though we know they are headed to the wrong place. This is when we can hear the drill breaking the door down, and then the unfortunate fate that awaited Isabel. Well, her painting was Blowhole Isabel, which tragically makes more sense now. So does Breathing Janice and Observing Paul. We at least got some ties into the previous tape with some of the paintings. But still, it's just been mindless killing with not a lot of substance. No mystery to really follow or characters to root for. Just a killer that you hope gets caught, I suppose. I will say some of the kills are just so absurd that it gets a good chuckle out of me, which I don't know if that is the intended response. The paintings still make me feel ill inside, but sometimes the descriptions are just so outlandish I can't help but find it kind of funny. However, the series is going to need to shift gears here soon, because it has been the same thing for the last handful of entries, and I'd really appreciate a change of pace. Meat. Well, I had to confirm my age for this one, so that's a good sign, right? Over the past week, the number of brutal murders has continued to rise. When Dr. Fred Baker failed to appear for work, the police conducted a wellness check only to discover him murdered in his own home. According to neighbors, a dog could be heard barking from inside his house the night before the discovery of Fred's body. Fred was known to live alone with his cat. He never had a dog. As the police entered Fred's house through the breached back door, they were met with a disturbing scene. Evidence of a struggle was discovered in the kitchen. Here, the police would also find a copious amount of sildenafil. That's suspicious. It is believed that Fred had been stealing medication from his workplace for quite some time. Fred was lying in his bed with no skin on his head. The bedroom floor was littered with used sandpapers. Gross. Neither the cat nor any signs of a dog could be detected. If the cat is harmed, we stop the video now. However, a gruesome painting was found hidden under the bed. The graphic painting seems to depict Fred's cat. Alright, video's over. This is the painting and its foreboding title. Well, isn't that just nice? 2 days later, the body of George White was found in his family house. Again, the neighbors reported hearing barking on the night of the attack. The extent of damage to the body made post-mortem identification nearly impossible. We are then shown an outline of the human body. We learn that similarly to other recent murders, George's face had been cut off. He had approximately 487 stab wounds across his whole body. 4 of the wounds contained traces of seminal fluid. What a freak, man. During the autopsy, several photographs were found inside the body of George White. One of the photos was found tucked inside the heart. The second was discovered within the intestines. The last photo was found crumbled up inside the pelvis. Despite the extensive damage to the photos, police were able to successfully restore them. We're then shown these 2 disturbing photos which show us what looked to be someone with all their teeth missing, and someone else looking a bit too happy. Then someone else with their eyes missing. Once again, we are given the number to contact if we know anything. We then learn that last night police dispatcher Sarah Stone and her husband Michael were abducted from their residence. Let me guess, Sarah was the one who took the 911 call from Isabel. The building's basement hatch had been destroyed from the inside. though the entry had been through the front door. Fortunately, Sarah had a security camera installed on her front porch. The camera footage captures the murderers entering the house of Sarah and Michael Stone, ultimately providing the most damning evidence yet. And in a shocking turn of events, we are about to witness a glimpse of the most violent killers in American history. The footage loads up, and all we see is the front porch, when all of a sudden we see a hand reach from around the corner, and we get our first full look at the killer. Well, one of them at least, and that's when the main man himself decides to show up. He gets right up to the camera and covers it, telling someone else to go get the door. The camera is torn off the wall, and we hear the door slowly get opened, and the screaming begins as our tape ends. I will say, at first I was expecting this one to be the same old, but that ending really surprised me. It was cool to see some characters in action. Then again, I'm not asking to see these killings animated too. What we've seen is good enough. If I'm being honest, I'm not sure why this entry out of them all was the one that got age restricted on YouTube. Nothing in this entry really stands out as being the worst or most graphic thing. I'd argue earlier tapes deserve to be age restricted much more than this one. However, we have now gotten our first full look at our killers. This is at least an advancement for the police department, I imagine. The next entry is when the positive praise started to come in for the series, so I'm pretty excited to get into these last two tapes. At this point, if the painter isn't subjected to a murder he would inflict, I won't be satisfied. Hell. Last night, police got an anonymous tip about trespassers in an abandoned textile and paint factory. The call had been made from a telephone booth not too far from the site. In a workshop outside the factory, police found a shocking discovery. We also are brought into found footage, getting a first-hand look at all that is being described. Body parts from 5 different victims were found inside. Some remains had been sewn together into something resembling clothing. A set of stairs lead down into what would be dubbed the cage room. I didn't sign up for cage match. It was evidence that the room had been lived in for a long time. The missing remains of known victims, as well as an unidentifiable body, were found there. We cut the footage and can see the cages, and what looks like some bodies inside. The room was oozing with the stench of death. A body in a state of severe decay was lying on the mattress. On a table in the room was a camera along with 3 photos. We get a closer look at the pictures, and can see that 2 of them feature Tate from American Horror Story, and then one with the killer licking a corpse. Again, a huge freak. A bowl outside the cage was filled with human urine. Inside the cage, the missing remains of Corey and Margaret Beck were found sewn together. Oh great, they made a return. Beside the mattress stood a bucket containing several male genitalia. A collection, I see. Inside the factory itself, more gruesome discoveries would be made. In what once had been the locker room, 2 bodies were found hanging from the same rope. One of them could be identified as Jim Lee. The other body was unidentifiable. Deeper inside the factory, police found what would be dubbed the paint room. We are taken inside and are shown several paintings that were found. One of them seems to be unfinished. While most are unknown, some of the paintings could be linked back to victims as far as 5 years ago, to which more paintings are shown. Emma's Last Smile, Bloated Betty, Stone Loop, Mark the Machine, Milk Teeth Heath, The Collins, Untitled. I'm morbidly curious to learn more about Stone Loop if I'm being honest. We then learn that in the ceiling of the next room, the missing Jones family was found. We are then shown an outline of the 4. A chain had been dragged through their bodies, and they were all in different states of decomposition. In the basement of the building, more bodies were found. 4 victims had been partly eaten. The camera slowly pans up, and it looks like bodies strung up on the wall, and the identity of these civilians are currently unknown. Here, police also find their colleague Sarah Stone and her husband. It seems like we just found the whole killer's hideout. We then get to learn that Sarah and her husband got the human centipede treatment, which means their painting is the Stone Loop. I guess I got my answer, unfortunately. Once back in found footage, we see that they had both been force-fed rocks. Thankfully, they did all the censoring for me. Going even further down, the police entered the sewer system. Here the police found what would end up being the turning point of the case. Apparently, the phrase, "once you've been to hell, you never come back," was written all over the place. And we learned that phrase is something Tina Rosenberg said in an interview not long after she survived her attack. We are then played a clip from said interview.
Those people took me to hell, and once you've been in hell, you never come back.
It's said that this prompted authorities to conduct a wellness check on Tina, who was living with her mother at the time. Officer Nathan Cole was the first to respond since he was in the area. What he encountered in that house was truly bizarre. We are then taken into Nathan's body cam footage. We see as he sprints to the front door and rushes inside. And man, this scene is intense as hell.
Raise your hands right now! You understand?
Our frame then freezes, and a face can be seen slowly fading on screen. This whole segment was crazy, and dare I say, really good. The animation here is awesome, and to see these killers brought to life is actually really frightening. The screams from Tina don't help either, and seeing her censored body slowly moving across the bed, away from the killer, is just so sickening. This kind of evokes the same feeling I had when I first stumbled upon this series, so the fact that it has managed to re-invoke such a sinking and haunting feeling is both impressive and upsetting. We learn that Tina's eyes and ears had been punctured with a pair of knitting needles. She was not aware that she was being rescued and kept screaming for 20 minutes. Tina's mother, Sienna Rosenberg, had been dismembered in the kitchen. The autopsy revealed the killer behind the mask was former police officer Bill Collins. Holy fuck. Presumed dead, police are still not sure why his DNA was found with the family's remains. Mona Lanius, I think, was apprehended by Officer Nathan Cole. She's confessed to more than 100 murders and is now awaiting trial. And the tape ends. Well, this was definitely a step up in quality. To think that Tina wasn't able to hear or see anything and was just being tormented by these two psychos, one being a police officer. I knew he looked weird the moment I laid eyes on him. But to not even know you're being saved, truly a haunting scenario. Honestly, I don't even know how there is one more episode. This would have been a pretty solid conclusion, considering one of the killers is now dead and the other is being held for trial, unless one breaks out. Let's see how this story concludes in the actually quite recent finale. The Painter. During a violent altercation last month, the serial killer now known as Mona Lanius was arrested by police. While detained, she confessed to over 100 killings and claimed she was far from finished. Mona seemed unusually cheerful about being caught and complied without resistance. Uh-oh, that's never a good sign. She happily assisted authorities in locating further bodies. Emma Riley was found in the woods not too far from where Mona was caught, likely referring to the painting Emma's Last Smile. She sustained approximately 80 broken bones throughout her body. However, the cause of death was strangulation using the victim's own intestines. Our scene then cuts out and takes a very disturbing turn. You know, I was worried that the killer would get the camera at some point, and I fear that is what just happened. She also disclosed the location of the body of missing investigator Sean Kane. He was found deep within the sewer system under the textile and paint factory. Our footage then cuts again to found footage, and we are seen walking through what looks to be these catacombs, looking around at all these statues. We then cut to a news report, where we learn that Mona was given the death sentence 2 weeks ago. She was denied a physical trial after she was caught trying to smuggle explosives into court. We've got the damn Joker over here. The reporter then confirms the existence of an interview, but nothing further is said about it. We cut ahead and learn that the interview was recorded by John and never released to the public. Said interview is then played to us. Mona is asked why she did the things she did, and I gotta be honest, I didn't expect her to sound like this.
Well, wouldn't you like to know?
I guess she sounds a bit more normal than I would expect from someone who has done all these obscene things. Mona goes on to say that the truth is that they made her do it, and that it was all rigged from the start. She is asked for clarification. Who is they? She says we know who she is talking about, going on about a machine deep underground that gets turned on and off whenever she is in her cell. The conversation shifts to Mona's upbringing, and we learn that she was adopted, and she grew up with Bill the police officer, essentially becoming siblings. It's then revealed that Mona was an absolute freak of nature her entire life. She would stitch small animals together, and apparently also knew Fred Baker back then as well, Fleshhead Fred. Apparently Fred had witnessed an act being committed between Mona and the orphanage dog. You can read that on screen here if you want to know what I mean. Fred then went and told the house mother what he had seen. This only made Fred's life a miserable nightmare from here on out. Mona and Bill made it their mission to torture him throughout his life. You can read right here one of the things they did if you're so curious. From the way Mona describes it, it sounds like she was using Fred to get the sildenafil from his job, and one day he refused, and then he was killed. Mona also begins to pleasure herself during the interview, resulting in John threatening to cuff her hands behind her back. Mona then tells us a bit more about Bill. She recalls a time where he pointed at a sunset and claimed that's where the devil was, and the two then ran towards the sunset. It's then revealed that Bill tried to get his life straight at some point. It must not have lasted long, as Mona reveals Bill and her would frequently sleep with each other, and that he did whatever she told him to which she describes the following atrocities we have witnessed since the start of the series as quote-unquote things getting out of hand, and that we know the rest. But then she said it wouldn't have happened if it weren't for this machine and these statues that were put out. Does she mean the statues we saw earlier in the entry? When asked about them, all she says is that they are connected to the machine, probably working as amplifiers to a sound that it emits. One was even at the orphanage. She then references an old pig that used to visit, and again says it was all planned from the start. She still takes responsibility for the murders, and admits to painting the victims before actually killing the victims most of the time. Again, referring to the machine, says it's been pushed to the ground, and said with sonic pressure a red man was manifested inside of her, and that he is the one who makes the paintings, and that it's this man who tells her who to go out and kill. She has just been a host being used for years, and this is something that Bill knew, and something the whole police department knew, and that they let her get away with it. This is all sounding like crazy talk. She reveals that Bill was acting as her little insider the whole time. John then brings up the grenade that Mona tried to smuggle through, and asks if that was something the red man demanded. But Mona claims that idea was all hers. She is then asked what she feels about receiving the death sentence, and apparently she wanted to get caught, even tried to many times. But she still says she was allowed to get away with it every time. She then goes on to say that this won't end with her dead, and that it will only get worse. We then learn that Mona was stabbed to death by another inmate the day after the interview. A map of the US is then shown on screen, with a bunch of circles flashing, soon covering the whole country. An alarming number of paintings have appeared across the nation, it says. Forensic analysis suggests that the paintings were all made by the same person. Even the handwriting on the backs of the paintings matches that of Mona. In correlation with new paintings, numerous individuals have also gone missing. Authorities urge everyone to stay locked inside during the investigation. We are then shown the paintings, and boy are there a lot of them. Frying Ryan, Decay of Jay, Peter licking his wound, Thomas in pain, Bent Becky, Long Skin Logan, Carlos Teeth, Thirsty Trisha, Ron during the fight, Ben Bone, Floating Ant, Class Clown Clover, Stan's Last Robert the Robber, Scream Ellie Scream, Caged Rage, Leaking Lionel, Rob the Slob, Smile Sharon, Rhonda the Cow, Head Will, Introspected Iris, Loop, Secrets of Terror, Jenny the Starving Chris, Infinite Long Neck Kurt, Hot Mary Slash Hush Hush Bree, Scream Richie Scream, Peekaboo Ears Ken, and finally, Self-Portrait. Holy fuck, that was a lot of paintings. And that was the end of The Painter. Well, that certainly took a lot longer than expected, and boy do I still have more thoughts. The Painter as a whole turned out to actually be pretty good, I'd say, at the end of the day. From what I have read online, it does sound like the creator kind of just wanted a way to showcase all of their art. And you know what? The art is scary and impressive as hell. And I think that is what really made the series what it is. It has a very distinct style to it with all of the paintings, almost like the distinct feeling of dread that comes along with it. Something I find interesting about the ending is that it kind of is revealed that there is something supernatural going on here. At first I thought Mona was just going on a crazy psycho ramble when she was talking about the machines in the ground emitting sound waves that manifested the red man from within, making her do all these murders. I mean, come on, it sounds like something a lunatic would spout. But then at the very end, when all those paintings were discovered at once all throughout the country, how else would that happen other than something paranormal? Perhaps it's kind of like Longlegs, where the devil came down and needed a servant of some sorts to send him souls. But in this instance, it sounds like someone set Mona up from the very start. If what she says is true, which I still have a hard time believing. But if we want to believe what Mona is saying, it is possible that there wasn't only one machine, and that multiple were built all around the country, and when activated, brought about this supposed red man within other people, hence all the paintings being found across America, and then the series ends exactly as it began, with a self-portrait of the red man, except this time not painted by Mona. To be fair, if we remember back, one of the paintings in the tape Hell was called Mark the Machine. Who knows? Maybe Mark was the man who installed all the machines. You know, at the end of the day, I'm glad that a plotline began to form near the end. Better late than never, I suppose. The series has a really strong start, a middle that drags and feels like it is just trying to be as gross and graphic as possible, and an ending that actually somehow manages to leave me somewhat satisfied. I like how Mona is also portrayed as just a downright psychotic villain. Granted, there are plenty of times where her actions are taken to the very extreme, almost to the point where I just roll my eyes. Like the stuff with the dog and all the Corey stuff now in hindsight is really just not necessary. It does feel like it was just there to be as edgy as possible. And man, did this series get super edgy, to the point where I laughed at some parts. The baby's head being shoved down the dad's throat? Like, come on. That's so absurd, it essentially becomes not scary anymore. I think that there were definitely a lot of fair criticisms that the series faced. It started to get repetitive, it started to drag, and a lot of people don't like shock value for the sake of shock value. I do lean more towards the side that there should not be limits to horror. I don't like the idea of someone having to dial back a scary movie because it might be too intense or too offensive. But it still needs to be done in good taste. There still has to be a reason for said material to be included. Because if there isn't, it's just there because it's the most violent thing you could think of. And honestly, that isn't all that hard to do. So I would say that checking out the painter for yourself is honestly entirely up to you. If you want to see cool and unique paintings and are interested in violent true crime, you might find some enjoyment out of this. But if you are easily disturbed, then maybe stay clear of it. To be fair, the ending saves this series a lot. If the last 2 tapes were just the same shtick, my opinion on it would be very different. There could have been a world where The Painter was a respected analog horror series amongst its crowd, but at least we're in a world where it had a bit of a redemption arc. However, that'll probably be about it for this video. If you stayed to the very end of this long journey, I thank you all so much for watching. Be sure to keep on leaving me recommendations down below, whether it be in the YouTube comments or the community Discord. But if you'll excuse me, I need to go wash my eyes out after some of the shit I just saw.